Well, I decided actually that this temperature gauge attempted repair isn't really going to work. It's probably beyond me. I can only get it to read up to about 140, 150 degrees in boiling water. So I think the problem was that I couldn't really solder up this bulb without losing some of the ether, possibly because I'm not good enough at soldering. Well, I have done a fair bit of it, but just to try and keep the temperature down in the bulb was a real problem. So I decided that rather than muck around with that, because I can't, if I could buy ether, I might persist with it, but it just seems almost impossible to get now. So rather than mess around with this temperature gauge, I'm going to send it off to a company in Melbourne who can rebuild it for me, and it'll come back all nice and pristine, and that'll solve that problem. The other thing I've done, which is quite nice and quite expensive, is to have the radiator record. This was done by a local bloke up here in the hills, and he's done, I think, a terrific job. So it's all been cleaned up, and there's a brand new core soldered into the old top and bottom tanks, which are in good condition. The reason it's inside at the moment in the piano room, because I don't want it out in the damp or coolness in the shed. Not that the shed is damp. But this has come up well. The original plates are still on it. One of the things about this is that it has the date plate here, 591, which I assume is January 1959, and the car was made on the 11th of February 1959. I don't know whether this 11 here means anything. Date, maybe? Don't know, but I believe this is the original core. Unfortunately, this plate here had a bit of rust behind it, so it's got a few little holes in it, but he's soldered those back on into the original position for me. So now I just have to try and get an opportunity to put some paint onto this and get that into the car. I still have to paint the fan as well, so I might be able to use a bit of enamel, even though the temperature's a bit cool. It's not quite so crucial as acrylic lacquer. Well, it's turned a bit chilly here in the Adelaide Hills. It's been raining, and although it doesn't get as cold as it does overseas, no snow, well, not likely anyway, it is down to about 5 or 6 degrees, so it's a bit too cold to do any spraying. I have done a little bit of work. I did manage to get a couple of coats of primer, actually more than a couple of coats of primer, onto these boot and bonnet panels, and that's been wet rubbed up, and I've just spot putted a couple of little spots that are still showing, but I can't really put any more paint on that until it warms up. It's a little bit chilly here to do that at the moment. And I've also painted the radiator, but that's not going to go in for a little while yet, and I've still got to do the little red section there, which is why that's masked off. So what I thought I'd do is do a little bit of welding. It's a good way to warm up, doing a little bit of welding. And these are the rear mudguard pieces, or fenders, I suppose, for some other people. And you can see how they've been repaired, rusted out here. Somebody has welded in a patch, not flush, so it's been filled on the other side. I haven't taken the filler out yet. This one's the same piece across there, where it's clearly been filled up with something. I don't think this piece has had another piece welded into it. It might have just been filled. I'm not quite sure yet. When I take the paint off, I'll find out. So, and of course these little pieces here have rusted out. So what I'm going to have to do is make a cut somewhere along here. This is a wired edge, which is in good condition. I won't have to remove that, so I shall make the cut inside that. Not quite sure exactly where I'll cut. That whole section will come out. I'll make up a new piece. I've got some 1mm zinc anneal here, which I'll make a new piece with, and that'll be welded in there. It says it's easy if you say it quickly. What I have to do is clean the guards up a little bit so that I can mount them onto the body, because I want to make sure before I weld this in that it all mounts onto the body in the right place. So I'll be doing that and then fitting the piece in and perhaps tack welding it and then taking it off the car and welding it up here. So that's a bit of a plan for today, and we'll see how we go. Well, I ground off all the paint and taken the filler out. This one here, as you can see, hasn't had any filler in it. It hasn't had any welding done to it, just filler put over the top, and of course the rust has just gone through, so that piece has gone. I've marked a line here, and this is where I intend to cut that section right out. Now the reason I'm trying to preserve this edge here, which is a bit thin, but it's because there is a curve there, so if I was to cut all the way down and cut this section out, which I intended to do originally, I have to make a little mould to sort of beat that piece of tin to get that same curve. So I'm going to try and do it and preserve that curve. Same thing here with this one. This is the piece that's had the plate welded into it, and you can see the welds here. All done with good intentions, not done all that well, but you know, at the time the cars probably weren't worth much, so somebody did what they could with it. Again, I'm trying to keep this edge here, but this is very thin and it may not work. I might have to cut through that. So this is the section I'm going to cut out, and then that's the next step. I tend to run a piece of masking tape along these lines just to give me a nice clean edge to watch while I'm cutting. I find that works quite well for me. So that's the next step, and we'll see how we go with that. Well, here's the first one done. It's going to take a little bit of planishing and filing. It's a little bit lumpy there, but probably warped very slightly when I welded it. I decided that I would cut this across here because it was too difficult to make this piece of flange edge here, so I welded that on separately, but I think that'll be fine. It doesn't show, it's covered anyway. There's a little bit here, probably put a little bit of filler in there. I can't quite grind that back, and it will take a little bit of filler, but all in all it's actually pretty good, and it fits on the car well. I bolted it on before I welded it up properly. I just tacked it in place and bolted it in place and had a look at it, so it seems to be good. And here is the second piece that I've just made. Getting the curve is tricky, but that I think will fit quite well into there, and when that's welded in place that'll be fine. And then I'll increase the flange on this side here just by adding a little piece into it. But so I'll tack this in place now and see if it fits on the car. So here is the piece just tacked and fitted onto the car on the guard, and it fits really well. So I'm very pleased with that. The bottom side, it's got a clamp obviously holding it there, is a good fit. It's all level with the bottom of that outer sill there. So I think now I'm probably okay to start welding this up, and as I said, I will put another piece into here just to match up with this level here and drill those two holes. The fender is held on with these little crosshead screws here at the front, which of course are covered by the aluminium plates. So next step is to weld all that in permanently, which I think I'll do off the car. I did think about doing it on the car, but I think off the car will be a little bit easier. And here is the piece that's now welded in. I'm not the world's best welder, but this little MIG welder I've got here is terrific. And I've welded in a piece there just to increase the width of that flange there. Might look a bit messy, but it's actually not bad, and it'll come up really well, I think, once it's all ground back and cleaned up. And here is the finished product, which has come up pretty well. A bit hard to see because of all the grinding marks, but there are a couple of low spots, and it's going to have a little bit of filler on it, but that's fine. And this edge here has come up quite well as well, quite neat, and blends in well with the others. I've just got to drill the holes here, which I will do in a minute, and the holes along the bottom flange here as well. So there you go. Generally, for somebody who's not a brilliant welder, it's come up pretty well, and it just goes to show you what you can do with a little bit of practice. Well, and here we have the finished product. Well, not quite finished. I've had to, these are not fitted on properly, but all the holes are drilled and screwed underneath, and you know what, they're pretty good, I think. I've still got a bit of filing and cleaning up to do on them, but it's amazing how well they fit. They're certainly a lot easier to fit than the MGA guards I battled with for hours. These pretty well went straight on. Here's the other one on this side. So I probably will leave these rear guards now. I might even leave them on the car for a little while. I think the next thing to do will be to have a look at the front guards, which is going to be a much more difficult job, of course, because they're basically bigger. I'll have to buy some repair panels from Kilmartins for the front guards, I think, because they've got a curve along the bottom edge, and it's pretty difficult for me to make that. So I shall invest in a couple of Kilmartins panels, and that'll keep me busy. I'm not sure when I'm going to get a chance to do that. It's amazing how dirty the car gets, even though I've kept it covered. Dust seems to get into it. It's the I think about the 29th or 30th of June 2014.